Bryce Elder is getting the ball opposite Foster Griffin of the Washington Nationals, and my goodness, the Braves could really use some length out of Bryce Elder. Yes, this is your Braves Today Scouting Report, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm Lindsey Crosby, and the next 15 minutes, we're breaking down everything you need to know before first pitch. Today, it's the Braves and the Washington Nationals in Game 2 of their 4-game series, so let's get into it. Both teams have put out their lineups for the day. For the Atlanta Braves, Ronald Acuna Jr. back in the leadoff spot in right field, followed by Drake Baldwin at designated hitter. Matt Olson is batting third at first base. Ozzie Albies is in the cleanup spot at second base, with Michael Harris II in center field batting fifth. Mauricio Dubon is back in left field batting sixth, meaning that Austin Riley is back at third base batting seventh. Important to point out, he was seen before the game working on the field with Chipper Jones. Let's see if that helps. Joey Bart in the lineup batting eighth at catcher, and Jim Jarvis, Jimmy Baseball, at shortstop batting ninth. Acuna, Baldwin, and Olson, Albies, Harris, and Dubon, Riley, Bart, and Jarvis. On the mound for the Braves, Bryce Elder. It's been an interesting little adventure here. 6-6, 3.96 ERA. The expected ERA says Bryce should be exactly where he is. 3.96 ERA, 3.96 expected ERA. The FIP, the fielded independent pitching, is a little higher at 4.47. But the reason that expected ERA feels like this is earned for Bryce is even though he's been struggling and giving up hard contact, he's been pretty decent at getting ground balls. So because of that, his barrel rate is not as bad. Expected ERA is looking at a lot of the same stuff that FIP does, right? Home runs, walks, strikeouts, the things you control. But it's also looking at the quality of contact. And the fact remains that Bryce gives up a lot of hard contact, but it's often on the ground. He's not giving up a ton of barrels. It's just felt like every time he's given up a barrel recently, it's been a home run. 5-pitch mix, sinker, slider, four-seam, cutter, change. He uses these dramatically different based on the handedness. Four-seamers, his primary fastball to lefties. Sinkers, his primary fastball to righties. But we'll see him change this up with the Braves needing more length. He did this on a Saturday against Boston early in the year. He went heavy sinker slider early, just trying to get ground balls, trying to weak contact, and he pitched into the 8th inning. It's entirely possible that he does something like this. A couple kind of performance observations for Elder before we get to the Nationals lineup. Watch Washington's righties. Okay, this is all kind of small sample size stuff, but left-handed hitters have a worse WOBA against Bryce Elder than righties do. 282 to 355. At Truist Park, which is an even smaller sample, I know, 241 against lefties, 367 against righties. Now, that's a small sample of just this year, but in his career in Truist Park, righties have about a 55-point advantage in weighted on base average versus lefties. So interesting observation, the reverse split thing. The changeup is the reason that Elder has reverse splits. 26.5% hard hit rate. It really not allowing a lot of quality contact on it. The thing you want to be looking for here is if Elder can get the changeup below left-handed barrels and then getting grounders with the sinker. That's the thing you're watching for with Bryce Elder. The warning signs here, one, it's the home run. He's allowed 18 this year. He's allowed 1 in 8 consecutive starts. And when you kind of look at how the game goes for Elder, strikeout rate, 24.4% first time through the order, 20.1 the second time, 15.6 on the third time. At the same time, his home run rate goes from 0.61 home runs per 9 innings the first time through to 1.74 the second time through to 2.13 the third time through. So Elder's struggling when he has to change up what he does the second and third time through the order. And then another observation is this is on one additional day of rest. We've talked about 4 days of rest this season, 2.62 ERA. He's a really good pitcher, 0.62 home runs per 9 innings. On 5 days of rest, it goes to a 4.30 ERA and a 1.84 homer per 9. On 6 or more days of rest, it's a 6.58 ERA and a 2.77 homer rate per 9 innings, right? So again, 5 days of rest for Elder. We need to be mindful or watch the hanging sliders and the elevated four-seamers the second and third time through the order, and really just those pitches in general, but especially to lefties. When you look at what the Nationals have done off of Bryce Elder, 2 hits off of him in 11 at-bats is James Wood. One of those hits, though, is a homer. Dalen Lyles, 3 for 8. One of those 3 is a homer. CJ Abrams is hitting .316 across 19 at-bats, but, knock on wood, no homers, no RBI. So we'll see what Bryce can do there. For Washington, their lineup, James Wood leads off like he always does. He's at DH today, though, so he gets a half day, right? Luis Garcia Jr. at first base. Dylan Cruz moves from center to right for game 2. CJ Abrams at shortstop is the cleanup hitter, as he tends to always be. Brady House at third base, batting 5th. Dalen Lyle in left field, batting 6th. Young catcher Harry Ford behind the plate, batting 7th. Jose Tena goes from DH to second base, batting 8th. And Jacob Young checks in for good defense in center field, batting 9th. I am a little surprised that there's 5 lefties here, given the stats that I gave about how much better Bryce Elder is against lefties than righties. This really kind of feels like we're just going to go with the lefties we have against a righty pitcher instead of trying to do anything different there. So kind of surprised that you don't see an Andre Chaparro. You don't see one of the switch hitters like an Asim Nunez or a Keibert Ruiz or whatever. Kind of surprised they didn't lean into, Jorbit Vivas, lean into the lefties a little bit more. Kind of surprised. We'll see if that's just a good bet on their part, a bad read by me. We'll see what happens. On the mound for the Washington Nationals, breakout starter Foster Griffin, a lefty, 12-2 with a 2.76 ERA. I want to caution you a little bit about being worried about that 2.76 ERA, though. It's a 3.91 expected ERA and a 3.93 fielding independent pitching. Strikeout rates like 22.6%, which is roughly close to MLB average. Really good walk rate, though, 5.6%, 90th percentile. He's not giving out a lot of free passes here. So the difference between strikeout to walk ratio, 17%, is a really strong gap between those two. It is a 7-pitch mix. So definitely something to be mindful of there. But the overall kind of takeaway against Foster Griffin is he's due for some regression. He is still a talented player, right? Part of the reason his ERA is a run better than the expected ERA in the FIP. He has a 249 batting average on balls in play and an 82.9% strand rate. He's not letting guys that get on base, he's not letting them come around to score. And we've seen guys who can sustainably outproduce things like that. Reynaldo Lopez is a great example. Back in 2024, feels like the last time he was healthy, he was really good at changing what he did when a guy got on base and keeping them from scoring. His base for doing that, though, was velocity. Foster Griffin doesn't have that. He's averaging 91.4 on his fastball. He does that through a 7-pitch mix. And a lot of these numbers, really good. Chase rate, 77th percentile, 33.4%. He's not giving up a ton of hard contact. He's getting above average number of ground balls. The one thing I will say about Foster Griffin, though, when he gives up hard contact, it is in the air a lot. His barrel rate of 9.2% is 23rd percentile. It's one of those weird scenarios where he doesn't get hit hard in general. He's pretty good at getting ground balls, but he still has a bad barrel rate because just about every single time he gets hit hard, it's a barrel. The trick here on this 7-pitch mix, we'll do it as a whole before we break into the handedness here. You've got to avoid expanding the zone against the sweeper, against the changeup, against the splitter, right? The game plan should really be attack something that's either elevated or left over the middle before he gets to 2 strikes, right? That sweeper has got a 35% whiff rate on it. The changeup, 34.8%. The splitter's not as good as those, but it's also not allowing like any damage off of it. And this is something where lefties have really, really struggled against Foster Griffin this year. Slug of 286. Righties are slugging almost 400. The weighted on base average difference is like 70 points. So that might be why Austin Riley's back in the lineup. This is either a scenario where Austin Riley that was just a day off yesterday, or maybe this is a scenario where he's going to be in the lineup against lefties. I will say I don't think it's just in the lineup against lefties because the coaching staff didn't start Eli White. They didn't start Jorge Mateo. If you were really trying to lean into, we want as many right-handed bats as possible against Foster Griffin, you probably would have put White and Mateo in the lineup, right? You'd have took Jim Jarvis out, put Mateo in. You'd have found a spot for Eli White. So this tells me it's probably just putting Riley back in the lineup. If you're going to hunt a pitch of Foster Griffin's, hunt the curveball. 472 slugging allowed. Fastball hasn't been great either, but really the whole goal here by trying to not chase the sweeper, the changeup, the splitter is making him come into the zone with either the curveball or the fastball. That should be the goal for this. The way that he uses these pitches is a little predictable, I guess. Against lefties, sweeper cutter, right? Sweeper is going to be a primary pitch against lefties. It has the biggest platoon split, so it's really good against lefties, really bad against righties, right? So that sweeper throws a ton of it with 2 strikes, almost very rarely throws it when he's behind. That's when he ramps up the cutter use. He also ramps up the sinker use when he's behind. He ramps up the splitter use when he's ahead, and he adds in more 4-seamers when he gets to 2 strikes. All kind of conventional, right? Your goal is just to prevent him from getting into that 2-strike count. And again, you're very few walks. He's not walking a ton of guys. So you're not up there trying to take a bunch of pitches to get his pitch count up and hopefully he walks you, because he's not going to do it. He very rarely walks a lot of guys. Against righties, it is more of a true kitchen sink mix. There's 4 different pitches over 10%, but 3 of those 4 don't break 20%, right? Fastball based, cutter and 4-seamer are the 2 most commonly thrown pitches. But again, when he's ahead, the splitter gets ramped up. When he's behind, that's when he cuts the curveball use, he cuts the sweeper use, he goes to cutter sinker. Kind of, again, standard usage. Splitter's only going to come out when he's ahead or when he has 2 strikes trying to get whiffs. Pretty common usage. The one thing I will say, lefties, he is very, very, very inclined to throw first pitch strikes. But because his chase rate is so good and he uses that sweeper a ton, it's not necessarily always going to be in the zone. He's just good at getting first pitch strikes. When you look at the bullpen status for both teams, this is something for the Braves. Yikes. The only completely fresh arm you have is Eliezer Hernandez. He's not thrown since he got called up for Wednesday. Yeah. Tyler Kinley threw 15 pitches Wednesday, was off yesterday. You're going to use him tonight. Didier Fuentes threw 27 across both games on Wednesday. The assumption is that you're going to throw him tonight, right? You hope he's an option today. But something's going to have to give. Unless Bryce Elder gives you 7 innings, something's going to have to give, because the game plan right now, you have Kinley and probably Fuentes if you have a lead. You have Eliezer Hernandez if you're behind. But Dylan Dodd threw 35 pitches on Wednesday. Dylan Lee, 28 pitches on a back-to-back, and 20 of those came yesterday. Raisel Iglesias, 23 pitches on a back-to-back. Victor Medeiros, 29 pitches on a back-to-back. You can't have all four of those guys down. Somebody's going to have to either pitch on a third straight day, or if you're Dodd, come back early after 35 pitches when he clearly ran out of gas at the end of that outing. Going into today's game with just 3 relievers is a recipe for disaster. So somebody from that group's going to have to give, or again, Elder can just give you 7 innings and you're fine. If Bryce Elder wants to give you some length, it'd be a great time for it. When you flip over to Washington, they're in a better situation, right? All of their leverage arms got last night off. It was still a close game despite that. So they kind of reset their back end. Riley Cornelio threw just 9 pitches last night, so he can come back too. Lefty Carson Palmquist, I would imagine he's done. He threw 30 pitches yesterday. Those guys likely get at least a day off after that. A converted starter like him, who's still new to the bullpen, he probably gets 2. But Washington has the better bullpen situation. Atlanta's arms are better, but Washington has a pretty good bullpen situation here. They have leverage arms. They have some length if they need it. Like you'd rather be in their scenario than be in our scenario when it comes to the bullpen. Kind of final thoughts in this one. Braves Today sponsor FanDuel has Atlanta as a small favorite on the money line, right? -116 for Atlanta, +106 for Washington. Over-unders right at 9 runs. Again, I think the path against Griffin is just going to be like, don't chase the secondaries. Don't let him get to 2 strikes. Try to stay ahead in the count so you can tee off on a fastball or a curveball in the zone. For Elder, it's going to be just avoiding the home runs. And a lot of that comes back to him leaving the pitches up. And it's kind of anathema to what we usually think about with Elder. But I would be fine with a walk here and there, missing low, than leaving pitches, leaving sliders to hang in the zone to get launched for homers. I feel like if Bryce Elder gets out of this outing with 2 homers or less, with only 1 homer allowed, Atlanta probably wins this game. If he gives up 2 homers, you might still win the game if the offense shows up. If Bryce Elder gives up 3 home runs, you probably lost. So that's the prediction we'll put on the books now. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. But that's your Braves Today scouting report. If you want the deeper analysis, the lineup breakdowns, everything behind the numbers, make sure you're subscribed to Braves Today. Enjoy the game. We'll be back after it with the postcast over on Locked On Braves. And today's 3 things are written game recap over at bravestoday.com.